You're listening to Gifted with Sheila White, a podcast that will inspire you. Its purpose is to uplift and entertain creatives to pursue their passions through their gifts. Sheila White is a film and television producer, author, and entrepreneur. And in each episode, Sheila talks with gifted individuals about their journey and the lessons they've learned. It will also inspire you to make an impact, living your best purpose-driven life with clarity. And now, here's your host, Sheila White.
Welcome to another episode of Gifted with Sheila White. I am really excited today. I have someone that is really exciting. You know, here on Gifted, we talk to different individuals that are using their gifts to make an impact and change the world. My special guest today is a former NFL athlete who played fullback for the Baltimore Ravens. Mr. Robertson brought a unique blend of leadership, resilience, and teamwork to his career. Mr. Robertson also has over 24 years of experience as an executive in the financial service industry, which specializes in the home lending vertical. He continues to hold a senior leadership roles at many different financial institutions. And most importantly, his faith plays a role in shaping his personal and his professional decisions. He's a Ravens Legend member and an active member of the National Former Players NFL Alumni, where he serves as president of over 150 local DC chapters and chairman of the NFLPA Advisory Board. He also serves on the Big Brothers Big Sisters in the national capital area as well. I want you to welcome my special guest to the show, Mr. Rob Robertson. Welcome to Gifted today.
Hey, thank you, Sheila. And I'm just so humbled and happy that you would have me as your guest on this Friday.
You know, I know that you had a very busy day today, but, you know, I want to go back a little bit into your early years of your foundation. I know you have a book and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I want you to talk about some of the life lessons that you learned from your grandmother going back, way back in the years.
Hey, listen, I always say, hey, myself and family, we're living off my grandmother's prayers. We just celebrated a new year, obviously, and I often reflect on New Year's Eve. If you want to find my grandmother at 11:59, she had these bowed legs and she had, constructed knee surgery on both, and she would walk as best she could. And sometimes it was hard for her to get on her knees to pray. But she made every effort. At 11:59, she would bow down, get on her knees as much as she could, and we knew that she was praying for us. And so when I reflect and I think about where I came from and where I am today, I know it's that foundation, it's those prayers that she put up in the air for all of us. And I'm just so humbled and thankful for her and what she did for me and for my family.
You know, there's a song that says grandma hands, and those hands obviously were praying and lifting up praise to God for her children and all of those generations. You know, as you grew and later in the years, you began to love football, to play football. So we want to talk a little bit as you went into high school, because your grandmother prayed for you, and I'm sure that shaped a lot of your character of who you are today. And like you said, you're still living off of those prayers. So let's go back into the high school years where football started to take a little shape and it started to get a little bit more serious with you. Tell us about those years.
It's funny, Sheila, you mentioned grandma's hands. My mom's younger sister, my Aunt Linda, she renamed the song Madeira's Hands.
Oh, my goodness.
At one of her birthday celebrations, I think it was her 90th birthday, she sung that song Madeira's Hands because, to your point, she had hands that, when she touched you, it was Madeira's hands. So, boy, oh boy, you just brought back a memory. And just in answering your question about high school football, quite honestly, it started a little before that. When I moved to Louisiana from Texas, I was on what we call the Pop Warner teams. And Sheila, I did not lose a football game for 6 years of my life. Every team that I played on, from Pop Warner to the 12, 13, 14, 15, 12 to 13, and then into middle school, we were undefeated. So,
wow.
I think about that. My Pee Wee League, we were undefeated. My junior league, we're undefeated. Senior league, undefeated. Middle school, we're undefeated. And then when I got to high school, that was the first year that we lost the first game. We were 9-1. And I have this competitive spirit. I was so upset we lost that game. But I tell you, those high school years really, really, really force, persevering through purpose. There was a purpose in me going through what I went through, and I had to persevere through that purpose. And so I reflect back on that, and it made me a part of who the man I am today.
We talk about Medea's hands, obviously, that was praying for you. And thinking about that, where you are now and going back into the years of high school, what would have said to yourself in those days? Because here's a strong foundation that you were getting and maybe really not maybe aware of the foundation she was laying at that time. But now looking back, what would you have said to yourself then if you had only knew?
Just continue to trust the process. Okay. My stepfather, my mother was remarried, and I had a stepfather who was like a father figure to me, who actually put me in football, Sheila. He used to always say, son, load the wagon, don't worry about the mule. Oh. And, as a young boy, you hear that, and you don't really understand, kind of what that means. But, when I reflect back at my high school days, I made a choice to go to the high school that I went to. I actually had a chance to go to an all-boys school, and I chose to go to the school because I didn't want to put a burden on my grandmother, and it was right down the street from her house. And so just reflecting on my dad, my stepfather would say, hey, load the wagon, don't worry about the mule. Do the things that you're supposed to do and the things that you can do, and let God do the rest. And that's what I would have told myself. Is just continue to load the wagon. Don't worry about the move. Trust the process, and everything is going to work itself out.
Which it actually did. As we move on into your career, the success of high school football and things, and I know there was championships happening, a lot of great things. And then it got to the point where now you're ready for the NFL. Go back and explain a little bit to us. There's a lot of young men out there that they wish they had the opportunity to get that call. What was that like for you at that time to get the notification that this is real? The dream is about to happen.
First and foremost, I'll say, right now I'm honored that you're talking to me about my story. And I recognize that many listeners out here, we all have stories. I just believe we all have stories that we go through and that we deal with. And that's this game called life. For me, I would have to go back to college, Sheila, because when I went from high school to college, I honestly didn't know or didn't have the aspiration to go to the NFL like I know some guys did. It wasn't until I heard some of my college teammates say, hey, I'm 4.4 seconds from going to the league. That meant if I can run a 40-yard dash really fast, I'm going to the NFL. And it wasn't until a scout by the name of Chuck Cook from the Kansas City Chiefs, he came to my college he came to actually see one of my teammates, Keith Thibodeau, who was a senior, and I was a junior. And I'll never forget that day. Chuck said to me after practice, man, you had a great practice. Now, Keith played on defense. I played on offense. So obviously, if he was watching Keith, he was watching me because I was competing with Keith.
Okay.
And when Chuck planted that seed, that's when I said, you know what? If I have a scout that's telling me that, hey, I had a great practice, it's one of those things, Sheila, like sometimes other people believe in you till you believe in yourself.
Exactly.
That's all it took for me, Sheila, was him to say that. And I started to work hard. So to answer your question, when I got the call, and this may be clear, I wasn't drafted. I was a free agent. And what that means is back when I played, there were 7 rounds and they lasted the whole weekend. I watched the entire draft, and I remember the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tim Mingy was a scout. It's amazing. I still remember all the names. And he told me, hey, we got a draft pick in the 6th round. And I thought I was going to get drafted in the 6th round. Well, guess what, Sheila? In the 6th round, my name didn't get called.
Wow.
And so the draft continued. And the last pick of the draft, they called Mr. Irrelevant. And guess what? My name didn't get called. And so I sat there despondent and upset. And Medea's hands came up behind me. And she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, baby, it's going to be all right. And she started to pray. And I swear, as I sit here, my phone rang, and it was George Kokanis from the Baltimore Ravens. And he said, Rob Robertson, do you want to be a Raven? And before I knew, I said, hell yeah, I want to be a Raven. And that's how my story in the NFL began.
Yeah. It's so interesting because there's so many young men out there and young ladies that want to go into professional sports. And now, they're looking at the glitz, the glamour, the fame, all of the nuances that are involved in professional sports, but they don't see the letdown. And that's the reason why I'm glad you explained that. They don't see the downside when they don't get called. And a lot of them will turn to substance abuse and just not try any harder. And so I'm so glad that you explained that. It may not be the first time that you get called on the first round. It takes a little time. And I know this has to do with your perseverance story, but I'm so glad you said that, because the fact that there is a foundation that someone was praying for you, there's that, that foundation that you had with your family, that really made a difference, because a lot of young people, they don't have a father in the home. They don't have maybe their parent is on a substance abuse or something like that, or going through some difficulty or in prison. And so they don't have the strong foundation, but there was something in you through high school. And as you got into, you kept on keeping on. You didn't stop and you didn't give up. And so when it didn't happen the first, second, third time, and you were there like, okay, maybe it won't happen, but it did happen. That person that put their hands on your back and encouraged you that it's going to be okay. And so that's really, really interesting for people to know that if you don't hear it the first time, it's not the end of the world. It's going to be okay. It's going to work out. Like you said, load the wagon and don't worry about the mule. That's the most really important thing. Now, as you're in the NFL, now you get the call, you're there. Explain to us what happens, because it was a turn of events. I mean, we thought this was going to be a Cinderella story. And you would go off into the wild blue yonder, your name and history and everything. But something happened along that time. Explain that to us. We know, but explain it to our audience.
Yeah. And hey, thank you for that question. And, it's important for me to know one other thing happened, during my pro day. And the pro day is when all the scouts come to your college and they want to see you. You have to run the 40, you have to do drills, you have to bench press. And I'll never forget, there was a senior executive for the Philadelphia Eagles at the time by the name of John Wooten, who ended up being with the Ravens when I got there. But I remember Big John, at that time, you talked about the highlights of life. I was trying to show my highlight tape to all the scouts in the room. And at that time, we had VHS tapes.
Okay.
I put this VHS in the VCR and I hit play. I remember John reached over and hit eject, threw the tape at me. He says, "Hey, Rob, we're not here because we want to see your highlights. We know you can play. That's why we're here." He said, "Rob, what are your lowlights? What are the things you don't do well?" And that's what I want to convey, Sheila, is that it's oftentimes in those lowlights that create the highlight reel in life. And so for me, going back to football, yes, you're correct. I did make it to the NFL. I was on the Ravens football team. I was a part of the inaugural opening up our brand new stadium in Baltimore, where you saw the Ravens, you saw me. I didn't have to get in the back of the lines. I got into places in the front of the line. It was free. It was fun. The glam, the glimmer, the life, the lifestyle was there.
Yes.
But I'll never forget, I was so tired. We're going through so much practice and different things. And I asked God for a break. And guess what? He answered my prayer. And Coach Marchabroda said, "Hey, guys, you are off. You don't have to come back until Monday." And instead of me taking heed to the prayer I asked for, what did I do, Sheila? All my buddies and teammates, "Hey, we're going out. We're going to party." I just asked for the break. I decided to go out and party. Didn't get home till 5 a.m. And the next day that I touched the field, I blew my knee out.
Oh.
And people often say, Sheila, like, "Hey, Rob, that could have happened to you." I'm like, no. I know the God that I serve. I know what I asked for. And I know that he was trying to show me, hey, listen, you asked me for something. I gave it to you. But you decided to go do what you weren't supposed to do out in those streets. and I'm going to show you just how fast I can take what I gave to you away. And that's my life story in terms of football. So the NFL for me stood for not for long. I got 2 accredited seasons. I was in the community. I played, got, great memories, great teammates. One of my most fond memories was flying my family to Baltimore, Madeira, and taking her out of the car and putting her in front of the White House because she's never seen anything like that. And for her to see the White House and look and cry and say to me, I never thought in my lifetime I would see something like this. That's my highlight. And so I go back to football, albeit it was short-lived. It still has some fond memories etched and tattooed in my heart and my mind. And I was able to take what I learned from football. I was able to pay my grandmother's house off. I was able to do certain things and start my life, honestly, Sheila. When I reflect back, that's my football story.
Wow. It's so interesting because you're talking about there's a challenge. You have an injury, then you have a different outlook on life. You know what you asked for, but it's really interesting because that perseverance helped you to get to your purpose, as we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it's really, really interesting because here a person thinks they're strapped up, ready to go, ready to live life, ready to have life-changing experiences. And then this holographic grip grips you. Now you have this injury. Now what am I going to do? Turn to the left or to the right? After having pay off your grandmother's house, having these great experiences, now you have to shift. But the shift brings you to your purpose, which in your book, you talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about some of these challenges that you've had through the years that help you to get to your purpose besides the injury, because being a believer, that in and of itself had to keep you pressing forward and looking up and know that it's not over until you win, so to speak. So let's talk about the perseverance of purpose of some of these challenges. Health challenges is one thing, but then you get the rejection. You're not coming back to the team. How did your family feel about this when you're going through this difficult time? Because they thought, hey, somebody in the family finally made it, and now you have to come to them and say, we got to let the air out of this balloon here, this dream. This fantasy life that we thought we were going to have. So explain to us some of those challenging times with the family, with the physical part that you had to endure that led you up to the purpose of what you're doing now.
Well, man, I would say that's an awesome question, the way you asked it, because, I reflect on driving back from Baltimore to Louisiana. And I remember putting my sunshade down and I opened up the mirror and looked myself in the mirror and I said, Rob, this absolutely sucks. I was fired from the NFL because of the injury. And again, I was able to play another year under Brian Billick. Okay. And again, I was in the community. I met a lot of great friends, a lot of great people. Even though I made that mistake and I went out and I blew my knee out, I still leaned on my grandmother's foundation. When we didn't have a game on Sunday, I went to church. I still did things in the community with the kids. And so that left an impact that, honestly, Sheila, I didn't realize it was leaving until later on in my life. So when I flipped the sunshade down and said, this sucked, my purpose led me back to Louisiana. Wow. And at that point, there was a woman who I met who was my friend, who ended up being my girlfriend, who my purpose, or if I would say what was my compelling why before was my grandmother, ends up being my compelling why and my wife.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And so I go back home, and you talk about, at that time I probably was depressed and didn't even know it. I just remember I used to love watching Maury Povich all day. Every day, and I used to love watching soap operas. I would go work out. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going back in the NFL. What happened? My coaches were fired. As I told you, I played under Brian Billick the second year. And my running backs coach, who went out my rookie year, Al Levan, went to Kansas City. Wow. He called me up and he said, hey, Rob, as soon as you get healed and the doctor releases you, we're going to sign you. I know what you can do. I want to bring you in. And I'll never forget my agent at the time saying, hey, you're going to look good in red and white, because he was at Kansas City. And me and my girlfriend, who is my wife now, going on 23 years, we sat and we went to a restaurant. I just had this feeling in my spirit, like, hey, something's not right. And she said, what's wrong? And I called the airlines. Back then you didn't have an app.
Yeah.
I had to call the airlines.
That's true.
They canceled my flight.
Oh my.
That was on a Saturday, right? And so you couldn't really get anyone on the phone. They had a game because the plan was I was going to fly up on Monday, take my physical, and then on Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll be back on the practice field. And that's what was the plan. Well, they canceled my flight, and I called Coach Levan. I said, Coach, hey, do you know what's going to cancel my flight? He says, Rob, it's out of my hands. And so what I found out that, and I still have it to this day in my closet, the doctor released me, and he says, Rob Robertson is free for full football activity, but he's a high risk of re-injury. Wow. And when I read that note, I called the doctor. I said, hey, I just want to know, would you hire me? Because you can't put that in somebody's record and think that one of the 32 teams is going to hire me. It's not going to happen. And that's when I knew my career was pretty much over, and I had to figure it out. And so my figuring out was my wife, my purpose, came to my house. She was in grad school, and she said to me, I'll never forget, she says, so what are you going to do with your life? She said, are you going to sit here and watch Maury Povich all day, or are you going to go back to school and get your degree? So Sheila, I left Northwestern lacking 12 hours. So I had to go back to school to get my degree. And so she closed the door. I'll never forget when she closed the door. It was just complete silence in the house. And I was ticked off because I said, who does she think she is to tell me I'm thinking I'm going to go play football. And it didn't happen. Wow. And it gets better, Sheila. So I go back, I enroll in school. I called Dr. Carol Abbey, who was the head of business, dean of business at the time. And I said, Dr. Abbey, this is Robert. I know who this is. I said, hey, I need to enroll and finish my degree. And he says, Robertson, let me tell you something. He said, you may have brought a championship to this university, but you're going to earn this damn degree. Wow. And I'll never forget that statement made me know, hey, I got to
work
get
for
in
it.
game mode and be ready to go. I can't go wooing it. They don't care that I played in the NFL. They don't care that I played for the Ravens. They care that I come earn this degree. And so the purpose in all of that, going back to school, the Ravens decided to go to the Super Bowl, and not just go to the Super Bowl, but they decided to go and win it. And boy, I am in my feelings at this point, right? Yeah. I'm in school. My team is going to the Super Bowl. I got guys calling me, hey, they left me this they left me that in the room, this gift. And it got to a point I didn't want to watch it. And I was like to my buddy, hey, don't even call me anymore. Yes. And, but through that process, I did finish my degree. That's when you really understand the handshake of what you consider your so-called friends. Yes. People teasing me, oh, Rob went back and now he's getting a job and he used to be in the NFL. If you name it, I heard it, Sheila. Yeah. And it was just one of those tough moments that I had to persevere through. And honestly, to this day, I think back, I love my dream of my childhood dream of football, but I also love where I am today. I don't have to get hit. God has blessed me with a beautiful wife for going on 23 years. I have two children. Yes. That's persevering, and this has been my purpose. So,
it's so interesting you said that, because you obviously had angels in the outfield and the infield, I will say it that way, that were really watching you and guiding you as you were going through these ups and downs of life, cascades, so to speak. The people that were watching over you, that's one thing. But then your grandmother, when she put her hand on your back and said, it's going to be okay. At that point, she believed in you and she knew that there was something more. And so that's what I love about your story, because, the perseverance through the purpose, it got you to where you are today. And it's interesting because the direction that your life took young people need to realize that you may be going in a certain direction. Something could happen that could be a life altering experience. But somehow or another, you kind of stepped over those landmines of getting into trouble because you were going in a direction that you thought your life was going to go up, and it went down. And here are all these people calling you, making fun and, just bragging, and things like that. But you managed to, like I said, escape the landmines out there. You could have went on drugs. You could have went in a lot of different directions, and a lot of people get discouraged. But the angels in the outfield that were working for you, that were there pulling on you, pulling you in a direction to get you to your purpose, which is amazing, because that gave you that sense of community where you wanted to be able to reach out. You were still working with young people and talking to people in the community and things like that, which got you to a higher height, in life. So you finish college, and then the financial services, kind of rings the bell. And that takes you to a whole nother level of just rising like dough, so to speak, So talk to us a little bit about that part of your life, because everybody doesn't get that type of second chance to succeed in something like that.
Hey, you call them angels in the outfield. I say angels along the journey. You're right. And hey, can I share a secret with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When I wrote the book initially, the title that was in my spirit was, Persevering through Pain. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And my wife, as I was sharing with her, hey, I'm about to, start writing my book, and we were getting close to, writing, and she looked at me, she said, honey, I just wish she said, I think you should change pain to purpose. She said, this hasn't been your pain. Yeah, we've had some bumps along the way, but this has been our purpose. And so I have to give her that shout out and give her that credit, because, as you stated, going from college, going back to college, and now into financial services, all of this has been, as there is a book out there, The Purpose Driven Life. This has been my purpose driven through my perseverance. Wow. So I think about it from that perspective. And, I did an internship when I was in college for a company who then the CEO of that company, his son started the first financial services company that I worked for in GMFS out of Louisiana. And so I called Mr. Brown. I'll never forget. I said, Mr. Terrell, he knew I was in the NFL. He said, and he put me in contact with his son. And it was just like, hey, my dad, I'm going to give you an opportunity. And I just remember, being in the role, and I still had this dream of going to play football because I wanted to play. I loved the game. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I was in my boss's office and the phone rang, and he had the phone to his ear, but the volume was so loud I can hear what the other person was saying. And one of my colleagues was in the bank cashing his check. And the punchline to that is, he didn't direct deposit his check. He claims he didn't want his wife to know how much money he made. So we laughed about that. But I said to my boss, I said, hey, does he really make that kind of money? And I'll never forget Jeff, who was my boss. He said, yeah, man. He said, I told you, Rob, if you apply yourself, you can make a good living. And Sheila, that's all I needed to hear. I got me a sticky, and I wrote a number on that sticky, and I taped it to the bottom of my computer. And everybody that walked by my desk was like, hey, what does that number mean? I said, that's how much money I'm going to make. I said, because if he could do it, I know I can do it. That's right. And from that point on, I led that company in sales for 5 years in a row. I was in the top. It was me and my buddy Grant. We were going back and forth, pushing each other, holding each other accountable. And that was the fun part of the job. And guess what? I didn't have to get hit to do it. So that's what I figured out. I'm like, you know what? If I can make this good living and I don't have to get hit to do it, that's right. We all the sky is the limit. And so I worked there for 10 years. Okay. And my wife, which was my girlfriend at the time, wanted to move to Atlanta because she had a job. And I knew in my heart I wanted her to be my wife. Yes. So I followed her to Atlanta. I stayed. My roommate was my cousin was my roommate, who I talk about in the book, Big Dog. Arthur Thomas was my roommate. My wife and her girlfriend, they had an apartment together, and the rest was history. It was one of those things where I worked in financial services. Hurricane Katrina hit. So just let me give you a little snapshot of the
Yes.
company that I work for
Mhm.
was in Louisiana. I moved to Atlanta. As
Okay.
I moved to Atlanta, all of our T1s and the connections were in New Orleans.
Oh,
Hurricane,
wow.
yeah, Hurricane Katrina hits, right?
Yes, yes,
Louisiana, New Orleans is underwater.
yes, yes.
Our phones and stuff and my fax in Atlanta wasn't working because I wasn't getting my leads and my data and the information that I needed. And so that was my first big lesson as a leader. I had a team in Atlanta, and I'll never forget, they were all complaining, hey, we're not getting leads, our phones aren't working.
Mm,
And Sheila, my first response was, how dare you, guys? How selfish of you
mm.
that you would be thinking about leads and phones when there's people dying in
Wow.
Louisiana.
Mm,
I had
amazing.
I had 3 people quit the next day, and finally, my boss, the CEO, and we're friends to this day, T Brown. He called me. He says, Rob, if you have to do what you have to do for your family, I
Mm.
understand. I
Yes.
told you I worked there 10 years. I was loyal, and we didn't know if we were going to make it through the storm, through
Yeah.
that hit of what it did to the business.
Yes.
And so, I wanted a bigger brand name on my resume at the time. And so I joined Wells Fargo. They had been recruiting me.
Mm,
And Sheila, to your point, what you said
mm.
earlier, it was like a euphoric rise.
Yes.
Every 2 years, I was getting promoted.
Mm.
And Wells moved me from Atlanta. My wife and I, we started our family. We lived in Atlanta for
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah.
Wells moved me to Florida. And then Wells
Mm.
moved me to DC to take over a region. And
Yeah.
that's the point that I want to make sure I come back to, Sheila, because you asked me about football.
Yes.
I was taken away. Remember, I told you I left and I was upset. I looked in the mirror
Mm.
in the sun visor and I said, "This sucks." I was
Mm.
upset and mad because they had cut me. I told my teammates, "Don't call me," because I was angry. I was just envious. They were in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. I wanted to be there with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I
right.
felt
Yeah.
like it was taken away from me.
Hmm.
But when I came back to DC, the first thing the Baltimore Business Journal put big write up, former Raven comes back through Wells Fargo. And when I tell you the Baltimore Ravens team, that organization, that
Hmm.
franchise has taken me and my family in as
Mm.
though I've been a Hall of Famer, as though I've been an all pro player. I only played there 2 years.
Wow.
Me and my
Wow.
family, we can go to games. I'm part of the Ravens Legends community.
Yes.
I do things with the team. We just had a reunion.
Hmm.
And I just want to thank, the organization right now, Steve
Hmm.
Bisciotti, who is the owner. Art Modell was the owner when I was there. But
Yeah.
they have a motto in the Ravens franchise: once a Raven, always a Raven.
That's good.
And we have this brotherhood and just camaraderie. And I still talk to my teammates, and I'm just blessed and humbled and thankful.
Yes.
Hey, we're all older, but we care about each other. I got some
Yes.
of my teammates that have read my book and they're happy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just overwhelmed with just happiness just to share that story with you. So
It's so interesting that, you explain it in that way because, there's a quote, by Martin Luther King, and I know you know it because it says, not everyone can be famous, but everyone can be great because greatness is determined by service. I know this is one of your sayings, and this describes your life as you go through the years, all the highs and the lows and the good things that have happened. This message that you resonate a lot. How do you take this message and instill it into the hearts of the young people? Because I know you work with the boys and the girls club. How do you take that message and instill it into their hearts? Because a lot of these young ones now, they all want famous. They want money. They see what's happening on television and in the sports world. That's what they're going for. They're not really going for service. So how do you take that mantra and instill it into the hearts of the young people?
well, I'll go back to your first question. Honestly, you asked me. You said, "What would you tell your young self?"
Yep.
And probably I would have instilled that statement in my heart at an early age. Because when
Mm.
you're young and dumb, and you don't know. You just want what everybody else has, and
Yep.
you think that it feels good to do what everybody else doing.
Mhm.
And I tell you this right here, and I'm holding up my cell phone.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
has just been, I would just say, um, a blessing and a curse for these young
Mm,
people. I think
yeah,
it's a
I
need
agree.
because you don't want to fall behind on what's happening in the world and technology, but it's a curse because you're trying to keep up with everybody and you see what everybody's doing in real time.
Mm-hmm.
I give you an example. I got a daughter, I told you, and I remember a time when she wanted to be with her friends, and
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, Sheila, if you invited me to your house,
Yeah, yeah.
me and my wife would come to your
Yep,
house, and
yep,
that's just us. But
yep,
now
yep.
people have to post like, "Hey, such and such is at your house." So, what if
Yeah,
you invited me to your house and this me and my wife, but you got another friend that didn't get invited, and now if we post it, they're like, "Well, Sheila didn't invite me."
that's
Now she's
right.
mad at you, or they're mad at you, and you don't even know why. And so
That's
I
right.
laugh
Yeah.
at that, and I say, I would tell these young people, it took me, a while.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I've lived life, still got a lot more life to live. But some of the things that people share with me, and when I was young and naive, I didn't hear that then. And I would just
Okay.
tell young people like, hey, listen, um, fame is one thing, but service is another one.
Yes.
Martin Luther King, as you read the quote, he said it
Mm-hmm.
back. When you serve, everything else is going to take care of itself.
Mm.
Like, for instance, I just came back today. I was at
Mm-hmm.
the National Mentorship Summit where, I presented another young man, Tyron Matthew, the Honey
Mm-hmm.
Badger, with the Excellence Award.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there to serve.
Mm.
I was
Okay.
there to serve. And what occurred from that was they ended up saying, hey, we need you to be a part of the author showcase, which meant I got a chance to show and share my story with my book.
Wow.
Service turns into opportunity that you
Mm-hmm.
can share your story with other people that need to hear what you have dealt with, because this is the reality. I tell people in life, all of us have ups and downs,
That's
highs and
right.
lows,
Yeah.
but we don't use the amenities that we have on our body. So I use this phrase like, Sheila, if you're driving in your car and if you had a flat, you're going to put on your caution lights. You're going to put on the lights that
Mm.
flash to let all the other drivers know, hey,
Yeah.
I need help, I'm stuck, or I need to get something done to my car.
Yes.
Problem with us in life, because of fame, we don't want to press that caution light on our life
Mm.
to let
Wow.
everybody know. So we suffer in silence because
Mm.
we're trying to keep up with what social media says we should keep up
Mm.
with.
Right.
That's how people end up busted, disgusted, mad. And as
Wow.
you know, you heard the saying, Sheila, hurt
Yeah.
people.
That's right.
And we want to go hurt someone else because we're hurt. And I just learned, like, hey, listen, when you serve, it takes care of itself. So that's all I'm about in my
Mm.
corporate life, at my job as a corporate banker. That's how I'm about with my family.
Yes.
And that's how I'm about me and my wife. Our mantra is like, we want to leave people better than we find them.
Yes.
That's our mantra with our kids. And
Mm.
hey, listen, let me tell the audience out there, we're not perfect. Trust
Yeah.
me, no. We
Yeah.
still under construction. There's some work that we are doing within ourselves. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't have it all together, but hey, every single day, I want to be better than I was yesterday.
Right.
That's
Right.
just what I
Right.
say, Sheila.
Talk about life under construction and some of the lowlights. As you said, there's highlights and lowlights and things like that. Obviously, your faith meant a lot to you during those years. Let's talk about a little bit about the substance that carried you through. How do you feel about God, about the angels that were out there for you? What has been the scripture or something that you've held on to through the years for you and your family, your wife and your children, that has helping our audience to understand you need more than talent. You need more than skill, even more than a gift sometimes. Sometimes you need an inner strength and an inner power. Talk to our audience about that, because that substance of character is really what's needed to stabilize you when you get to the top. If you have the high highs, because you have the low lights, as you said, but when you get to that point, there has to be something greater than yourself that can keep you balanced. So let's talk about that a little bit in your life.
Hey, you're going down a road that kind of makes me a little emotional, but I would just say, one of the verses that sticks with me in my spirit is, "To whom much is given, much is required,"
Mm.
and I just believe in my heart, we are required. When we all have gifts.
Yes.
Your theme is gifted with Sheila.
Yes.
This is
Gifted.
your gift.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we all have gifts, and God has blessed us with gifts and talents, and what my gift may be may not be your gift, and vice versa. But we're required to give back. And to whom much, if God blesses me with a gift, he expects us to give back. So to whom much is given, much is required. We are required to give back. We are required to help. We're required to be kind. We are required to love. We are required to be the best versions of ourselves. And life and mine, and this is Rob Robertson, I'm just speaking for me, it's kind of like a daily crucifixion. And sometimes you have to die for others. And so I learned that in my premarital counseling class, because my premarital counselor asked me and asked the men in the class, hey, would you die for your girlfriend? Would you die for your fiance? Wow. And all the brothers say, oh, yeah, if we walked outside and a car was coming, I'll move her out of the way. I'll take that for her. He said, no. I'm asking you, would you die spiritually? So when you get married and you're hungry and you come home and she didn't cook, you got to die. When you're on the road and somebody cuts you off and you know you were right and they were wrong, are you going to follow them with road rage? No, you got to die.
Yes.
When that boss ticks you off and you didn't get that raise, or that girl didn't do what you thought she was going to do, or the guy treated you the way you didn't want to be treated, you got to die. That's what I've had to learn. So in premarital counseling, I'm like, okay, I can die for my wife. And I adopted that principle. But what I realized was Rob Robertson wasn't dying for others. And I had to adopt that in my life in general. And sometimes like, man, and Sheila, it's funny. I've gotten older. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm just getting, soft. And I know that that's God working on me. And so I will share this, the perseverance, it came from that premarital counseling, because he asked all the men, pick a word for your family, gentlemen. And he said, and what I want you to do is go study that word in the Bible. So I go back, and if you read it in the Bible, perseverance brings patience. Patience brings hope. And hope brings proven character. And that's why perseverance is my family word. And when you pull in my garage, you'll see perseverance before you walk into the house. And we live it, and we see it, we breathe it every single day.
Wow, that's so awesome. It's just has been a plum pleasing pleasure as well as privilege talking with you. And I know that our audience has a lot to chew on. I mean, we went all the way from the guttermost down where you didn't have anything, all the way up to the high mountain, and being able to have a quote like Martin Luther King's quote about service is so important. And I think that's what's needed, as more people to help each other understand that we're all in this together, and it's about service. And so the service we give and the life we live can really make a difference. And your life shines in that way. Perseverance through purpose. More of us need to get that lesson, and we need to get the book. How do we get the book, for instance? Tell our audience how they can get a copy of the book.
Well, hey, audience, you can go out on Amazon and just search Persevering Through Purpose, Rob Robertson. And it's out there on, you can get a hardcover, you can get a paperback, or you can get an ebook. And so there's 3 different ways you can get it. And, listen, I really, really, really appreciate the support for all of you who would go out and purchase the book. Sheila, I believe that, feedback is a gift.
Yes.
And so I would highly, highly ask you to provide your feedback. I'm on Instagram at Robertson Rob Jr. So again, that's at Robertson Rob Jr. I'm on Instagram. I would love to hear what your purpose or what your perseverance through purpose is, and just share with me. Again, I sincerely appreciate you. Sheila, I got to tell you, like Gifted with Sheila, this has been an awesome experience. I want to thank you, because your gifts and what you are doing in the community matter. And I really sincerely appreciate your time and your presence with me today.
Yeah, well, I just want you to know, folks, this is a book that you need to get, Persevering Through Purpose. This is a must read. All of the young people out there that are saying, coulda, woulda, shoulda, had an automata? Yes, you should. You should get this book, Persevering Through Purpose. And this is a person that has lived it. He's not just talking about it. He has been through these challenges. He's come out on the other side. He's learned how to load his wagon and don't worry about the mule. That's what you need to do as well to be able to move forward. There is a better best than you now express. And once you attain that better best, you can surely bet there's a better best yet. And Mr. Rob Robertson is proof of that. And I want you to know that. I want you to get the book. I want you to get in contact with him. And I want you to encourage someone. Let them know that it's about service. This is a person that has told us, that has lived it, and is living witness that it can be done. You can start out from where you are and go all the way up to the top. And it's not over if something happens, that you can begin again. There's second chances. I want you to know that you are uniquely designed and strategically gifted. Use your gifts to impact the world the way that Mr. Rob Robertson is doing every day of his life. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for listening to Gifted with Sheila White. We hope you understand how your gifts can make an impact on the world. Gifted with Sheila White is produced by Road to Eternity, a film and television production company.